Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
It was in the year of our Lord 1778 when I, Frank Aaron McDougall, made voyage from Ireland. Carried upon that wind of freedom was I bound towards that shining light across the sea, to mate up with me brother Newley and his kinfolk in the Carolinas. It was a fair and prosperous land, he proclaimed, free from the tyranny of the king's clerics and their prying eyes. An ocean away it was, and a world apart, he said. So, being inclined, I hawked all me worldly possessions and made passage with me dearest wife and sweetheart Cathy, my wee gentle son Tom, who was taught of tongue, but so meek and mild was he could even charm the fairies from all their worldly treasures. Pure gold the lad was, and his elder sisters Ruth Ann and Elizabeth being the very spitting image of their own beautiful mother. As lovely as Eve they were upon creation's first dawn. We were now to be christened over mountain men, for the cities wouldn't have us. Don't, in their shameful baptismal of disdain, as my brother would come later to explain, being he more tongue-in-cheek, of course, as he bellyached and told, for one reason or another they have sharpened their scalping knives against us, brother. But in his heart he knew it was because we were Calvinists, and being undeterred in the least, I laid me money down in exchange for some acreage adjoining his. For as he gloated, the earth is so very rich you can grow anything. Why, even the roosters are laying eggs now. And don't even get me started about me pigs. They're the size of horses, and me cows are a sight to behold, like great lumbering elephants they are. I tell you, you'd have to raise barns the size of Heaven's Chapel to store such a bountiful harvest. Nothing but milk and honey as far as the eye can grasp. And so, needing no further swaying, I built the family little cabin. For a mangler both wood and words am I. For carpentry was to me trade, and doodling in this journal when time pens me down by the ears, when me hands grow idle, and when me back won't bend, and thus these fingers of mine begin to twitch. But alas, farming was another earthly matter altogether. I, being a tiller of wood and not of earth, hadn't dealt with before or much studied on. But God being merciful had in his providence blessed me brother with a green thumb, and one to spare. You'd almost swear he had 5 of 'em at times, how the ground obeyed him. But alas, from cradle to grave we tread a word of pitfalls to only realize the peril once it's too late. Aye, I remember it as if it was only yesterday. The memory is as clear as the lagoons of the oilless sky. I, as usual, was finishing up clearing away my fields with me good old mule Daisy leading the way, when all of a sudden, like, as fast as ricking an ankle bone, she fell into a gap left by an old rotten stump. It must have been the most long-rooted thing to ever push its ugly face through the topside of God's green earth, and now caught tighter than a quirk she was, wedged in its nook. And not being able to budge her in the least without busting a gut, I threw my hands up and hastened to fetch me brother, being 2 shovels faster than one. Thus we resolved to dig her out. And upon our return, Newley complained, "Are you pulling me leg now? I, with me own fields to tend and a wife expecting. Is this not April Fool's then?" For my thunder, there stood Daisy leisurely ambling about. And judging from my expression, me brother believed my report and suggested, "Oh, maybe it was some cherky having a bit of fun with you." And being mostly relieved, I thought, if it was, I could have surely kissed each and every one of 'em. God bless 'em all, I said, for every ear to hear. So, giving no further mind to it, I soon commenced to planting me crops, when then I first became aware of my son Tom spending more time exploring about the rim of the wood. And thus, I would call a warning out to him. "Don't you leave me eye, son, and watch out for those bugaboos, they'll nab you given half a try." And before long I would be lost in me work again, rooting around like some critter in the dark loam of the earth. And now, as I think back upon it, the boy was most probably gone for hours at a time. Being I so fearful of me crops and all, I paid no never mind to his wanderings. for my time was held captive by the field and plough. I had no time to spare with hungry mouths to feed, no less. But thankfully, though his speech was improving a bit, and that's when I first heard the ring of Toby's name as young Tom Tom struck out as a meteor from a clear blue and said,
Toby likes to smile a lot. He has big square teeth. He don't talk so good either, like me. Who on earth is Toby, boy? I inquired. He's the man that lives in the woods. He's the man that pulled Daisy out.
Ah, the man that pulled Daisy out, you say? Well, I asked. Had he any friends to aid him?
No,
the child simply answered.
It was just him.
I see. I replied, just going along with his ruse. He must be a really big fella then.
Ah, yes,
Tom Tom excitedly shouted. Well, if you ever see him again, would you kindly ask him to pull these stumps out of the ground for your poor old da? My back's killing me something fierce, don't you know? And then the young'un came up with a real doozy and said,
I think his name is really Mo. But he likes it when I call him Toby. It makes him smile all the bigger. And he calls me Kanakatu, which means Littlefoot.
Then the boy said as he stretched his palm high above his head whilst standing on the very end of his tippy toes.
He lets me stand in his hand and he picks me up like this, so I can see all the pretty birds in the trees.
Why, I almost wanted to believe the little charlatan as I replied, That is a mighty big fella. And his name is Mohobe, you say?
Aye, that's it,
he said.
And he has a dog too, a great big old wolf. He saved him when he was just a wee pup.
Oh, did he now? I asked. And how did he go about doing that?
He got stuck between two big rocks one day,
he told.
And Toby showed me the one he broke in half to get him out. Toby is really strong.
That he is, lad, that he is, I replied with a great big smile on my face. As well as having a fine name, too. It must be nice to have a Toby always pulling you out of the jam when you find yourself in a fix. Then, listening to the rumblings of my stomach, I asked, You have any of that fine cornbread left your mother gave you? I'm hungry enough to eat a nest full of buzzards' eggs, I am.
No,
he replied.
I shared it all with Toby. He really loves Mama's cornbread, a whole bunch he does.
Well, I said, being hungrier than ever, we best be getting home for some supper or your mother will be sorely cross with us. And we can't have that, can we? And then, I told, having a bit of fun with him, Now, I might not be able to tote you in my hand and all, but I bet my bottom dollar I can give you a lift on my shoulders. And off we went, a ripping and a blazing and a cutting up all the way home. We made such a merry old time of it. There was none better in all the world. And then, later on in the evening, after supper, with all the young'uns nestled away for the night, I told my Cathy about our Tom Tom's new acquaintance. As I whispered into her ear, Do you know our son has an ogre for an imaginary friend? I never heard him talk so much in my life. It's like, how many pixies can do a jig on the end of your pinky? As many as you want. He has an awfully big imagination, as big as his friend.
Praise be,
my Cathy softly spoke as not to wake the children. It does me heart well. But I guess sure, Frank, he may not be fibbing, for I never known him to tell a lie before. It's like if he said he'd seen a chicken dipping some tobacco. All you have to do is check under its wing to find its snuff box. It has to be, darling, I replied, for no one man could have pulled Daisy out. Not by himself. No, there's not a man made of earth and ore under heaven's eye can do that sort of feat. If you say so, dear, my Cathy softly replied, and thus we drifted off to sleep, pondering such things as they were, when not too long afterwards then, upon the following morning, I sprang as a rule straight in me bed, in the most dreadful mortal fear to the shrillest shriek of death I ever before heard in all my 32 years, for it was me Cathy a-hollering and a-yelling from atop the planks of my porch, making such a ruckus as even to wake the slumbering dead in their eternal rest. And as I came a-busting out the door, half out of me wits and still half asleep, was I, almost too afraid to ask what was the ungodly matter, or who, or what had died, when then I nearly tripped over a slain deer left on my front stoop. It took me a second to consider our predicament, and thus I reasoned as I reassured her and said, "Don't you be worrying, darling. It was only newly leaving us some fresh venison." And she too agreed and replied, "It'll be brammer to have some meat in our potato soup. It'll fill it out nicely, it will." And so we went about our business, when out of the corner of our eye we spied little Tom-Tom standing upon the edge of the field facing the wood, as a pastor toward his congregation, chattering away, when my Cathy remarked, "Oh, isn't he sweet? He's preaching to the fairies which live in the trees." Then she called out to him, "Tom-Tom, come and get your breakfast before it gets cold." And not long after which I began to dress out the stag with me good old handy book knife, when suddenly it struck me queer not to find a wound upon it. My eyes, indeed, would go blind before finding a mark, when then I figured it was only my brother and his Indian ways which felled the deer. Therefore, I purposed to ask him this very question later, when time permitted, for I too now had a field to tend, so off I went with hoe in hand to render my daily labour whilst whistling a lively tune. But still, the question caused me some fret. But, however, the notion had soon sprouted legs and taken a skedaddle, for mine eyes angrily beheld something had been eaten on my peppers and potatoes, and the little corner patch I'd planted, and I seen whatever it was had stopped at the radishes, only taking a single bite from one and discarding the rest. And now, too, I found myself preaching to the trees and saying, "That serves you right, you dirty bugger! Gnawing that for a while, ya?" As I shook me fist in the air for cause of all my work and sore back and all, and so I thought in me displeasure, "Oh well, I'll have to be doing it all over again, like one time wasn't enough already." A fact which gave me no greater lament. It was the vexation of vexations. A true bother it was. But nevertheless, my dark mood would lighten up again, not wanting my family to see an angry scowl upon my face and all. And when getting home in the evening, I asked my Cathy, "Where on earth has Tom-Tom been all the long day? I haven't seen hide nor hair of the little June bug since breakfast." And as she pointed out the window and informed, "There he is. He's been there quite a spell now, just talking away he is." Then I inquired of her, "Do you not see that darling at all? What are you talking about?" She unknowingly replied, "That tree in front of our Tom-Tom." I said, "Oh, there's not a lick of wind, yet it is swaying back and forth." And then Miss Cathy, with her eyes being young as they were and sharper than mine, strained all the harder to see, when suddenly all her colour ran out. Her face became as pure alabaster it was, which gave me quite a scare, the most awful sight, I must say. For was she not then petrified as Edith, Lot's once betrothed, as she longingly gazed back towards that evil city's destruction, as she then most stridently screamed aloud and said, "That's not a tree. Oh dear Lord, Tom-Tom, get away from there now! Run! Run!" she cried as she smacked the door, high-tailing it whilst pulling at the ringlets of her chestnut brown hair, with me no sooner trailing after her flowery skirt-tail no less. Now, yelling too for what thing I knew not, but me darling Cathy had seen something, and that was for certain sure. Now, our Tom-Tom being a good boy, he heeded his mother, and came at Johnny on the spot without nary a complaint. And as we met in the midst of our field, my Cathy scooped him up into her anxious arms, towards her thrashing breast. Why, I never seen her so scared in all my life, as she then swung upon her heels, ablaze in her fiery course all the faster back to her homestead. It was as if her feet were bounding upon air, never touching the ground once. So truly afraid me wife was is all the words I have to tell. And now, it seemed though, the acres would never end in their merciless, endless track. They just went on, rolling out as 100 miles or so before us, until I reckoned my worn-out legs were going to fall off for sure, and thus was I sorely tormented by the fact that just maybe I should have gotten a farm just a wee bit tinier instead, for apparently my eyes were bigger than my plate, it pondered. And as this thought was yet bouncing round and accusing me of its various accusations, with me 2 lungs a burning as a red-hot poker inside. Now, as if setting me very ribs upon fire like dry kindling it was. One most thankfully, alas, it couldn't have arisen any sooner, as we then flew headlong through the door in our mad dash. Now flopping we were as 2 fishes on the floor, near winded from the heat of the race. And when finally Cathy had found her breath again, she screamed to me, "For heaven's sake, lock the shutters and bar the door! My God, have mercy upon us!" And still not knowing I did what she bade, she sat there just shivering in the corner whilst holding our little tom-tom with Ruth Ann and Elizabeth, and now all but tears, asking, "What's wrong? What happened to Mama?" "I don't know, girls, but everything will be all right," I said, as I tried to calm them all down. All except for little Tom-Tom, for he showed no fear at all. And tried though as I might, I couldn't figure what ailed me poor wife. For my Cathy wouldn't speak of it in fear, or if she gave words to it, it would become real, or something. So I asked Tom-Tom directly, "What did your mother see?" And then I seen Tom-Tom loved on his mother's neck all the harder with his tiny little arms, as he thusly spoke with the sweetest words of encouragement as only a child could do. "Don't you be afraid. Toby will never hurt you. We're friends." And alas, when me darling Cathy calmed down, she said, "I don't want you to play with Toby no more, and stay out of the woods, do you hear?" "Oh, do I have to, Mama?" Tom-Tom unhappily whined. "I really mean it, young man, and I'll give you a scalpit lug," his mother told, and by all appearances it looked like she meant every word of it, and was soon to do it for sure. And then I asked, "Dear heart, what did you see?" "Frank," she finally told, "if I wasn't such a Christian, I could kill your brother for bringing us out here. A land flowing with milk and honey and giant cows, well, he didn't say anything about monsters. It was the most evil thing I've ever seen. Its eyes just hung there as 2 great big old empty suns, just staring back into me soul from a black sky." "Oh, Mama, Toby ain't no monster. He's good," little Tom-Tom cried out. "You mind your mother, dear heart," she replied. "I don't want to hear that beast's name ever mentioned around here again." "But darling, what did you see?" I asked again. "I don't want to talk about it," she snapped, and seeing her mind was made up, I let it alone. But even still, I couldn't help but saying beneath my breath, perhaps it was just some sort of trick of the light. Which, of course, she quickly overheard and chided, "A trick of the light, my eye! I know what I saw. A monster it was." Oh boy, I thought to myself. It was going to be a long hot night under a Carolina moon, jumping at every sound and with no supper no less. I must say, I felt as helpless as a motherless child in regards to the whole ugly matter. It was like trying to resurrect the ashes of which I had no power over. It wasn't like I was the good Lord or something. Still, to my surprise, when morning finally came, all was well again. It was as if nothing happened at all. And when I went out on the porch to stretch me stoved-up legs, I was dealt an even greater shock. For now, I saw all the stumps had been pulled from the ground, with their roots pointing sunny side up for the first. And that's when I felt wee Tom-Tom's little hand in mine whilst saying,
"Toby is really strong, isn't he? Toby likes potatoes. He hopes you like the deer."
And it was the first I was a loss for words. All I could think, I was going to be spending the rest of me life covering them bloody holes. But at least they were gone now, thank goodness. And once I gathered my thoughts, I further inquired, "Did you ask your ogre friend to do all this for your poor da?" But before the child can answer, I seen me brother Newly come a-running across me field, wildly flaying his arms and rifle about, and yelling something about the British, and, alas, when we were finally face to face, he told, "Let me catch my breath for a minute." And when he had, he said, "Cornwallis and his toadies have their eyes on our neck of the woods. Mind your Cathy and young'uns and hide all your valuables. They have sticky fingers, don't you know?" Are you certain of this?" I asked. "Trust me," my brother said. "Ferguson is on the move, and he promises to lay waste to our lands with fire and sword if we don't surrender our arms and bend the knee to him." Then he said, "I sent me wife to her parents, and now I'm headed directly for Sycamore Shoals to join up with Shelby and his patriots." And, as he was leaving, he yelled over his shoulder, "Brother, when life deals you an axe, it's best to get started to chop in some firewood." And as I turned round whilst wringing my hands together as my brother fled from sight, I seen my Cathy glaring at me with those steely blue eyes of hers, which directly sent a shiver up my spine, as she now complained for a goodly reason. And thus, I was bracing for a "I told you so," as she admonished. "Frank, you know I love you and all, but as God is my witness, I could really kill your dumb brother. Roosters laying eggs, pigs the size of horses, and now the British coming about to spoiling the land as the 10 plagues of Egypt. What on earth have we found ourselves in here?" "Yes," I thought to myself. "What have we found ourselves in?" A dread pondering it was which rattled round as a dark pebble within the echoes of my mind. For sure, I had a bad night, and now I was guaranteed to have an even worse day. What else could go wrong? The notion stabbed betwixt my ears over and over again as a knife. Yes, it seemed we were all in the eye of a perfect cack storm, blowing its stinky muck about. And all I could think, I didn't even have to leave my own fireside. And yet, trouble came a-knocking. Oh well, tomorrow will be a better day, I thought. So I said, "Darling, let me fix you some breakfast. I'll make your fritters just the way you like 'em." Seeing that she was still madder than a wet-setting hen, of course, for her fear had long since stewed over into anger, and it was just my wee hope to smooth things over a smidge. But, alas, wasn't meant to be. For I hadn't even finished with me bloomin' sentence yet, when I heard a rifle butt bashing against me door, and upon answering it beheld 4 men dressed in summer coats, all brandishing muskets whilst saying, "Will you not join Cornwallis's army? We need men like you to fill his ranks." And my reply was, "No, lads, all I want is a bit of peace and to be left alone." And it was clear the tall, skinny one wasn't liking me answer in the least. And, too, it was as if the devil himself was peering down his ear, no less, as he loomed there as a beanstalk. A real skinny malinky longlegs he was, and told, "Well then, if you are not a loyalist and will not join the king's army, then that either makes you a rebel or a traitor. And we hang traitors around here, don't we, fellas?" And thus, they all agreed, hankering to see some killing. And then he commanded the others by saying, "Now drag this man out and hang him upon yonder oak." And as they were dragging me to the tree of my most certain demise, I argued with them, "What gives you the right to murder a man in cold blood? Do you not see I have a poor family that'll be left all alone to fend for themselves in this pitiless world?" Hence the tall, skinny one, being in charge, glibly said, which, of course, his words didn't exactly inspire confidence in my grim future and all, being he now only interested in stealing and plundering, no doubt. "I tell you what gives us the right. The king and his parliament and old Miss Brown Bess here." And, as he patted his gun and further told, "Hell has no currency, but it pays its debts in flesh. Now, string him up. I want to see him dance, and mind you not to bind his hands for sure." And then they left me there, with not even a bloody bucket to stand on anymore, strangling for me breath and kicking as I swang back and forth as some ghastly pendulum held betwixt the earth and sky, as I listened to the wails of me family a-squalling, all except for my little Tom-Tom. All he did was just stand there and called out, "Whoop, whoop, whoop," as loud as his wee lungs could carry, as all the while the heartless bandits, these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, chuckled and blithely exclaimed, "The boy's lost his mind seeing his father dying." And after which the little runty one petitioned with his dark eyes as black as the Earl of Hell's waistcoat itself and said, "Let me stick him with me knife, boss, so as he'll shut his mouth." And the tall skinny one answered, now appearing more as a devilish scarecrow than a man, "Aye, there will be time enough later for that, boys." Lastly but not least, the fat grubby one with the gimpy leg most wickedly requested, as he greedily rubbed his paws together whilst wiping the tobacco juice from his snarled lips, "After his send-off to the great pearly gates, can we have some horizontal refreshments with his lady folks?" As saying this, he grotesquely chewed away on his tobacco plug as a gruff billy goat, giggling the whole time. And thus, the tall skinny one, that dread, scraggy scarecrow of a man, said, as he smiled with a most vile grin, revealing his black and dead teeth, all spread out like rotten fence posts in his foul mouth, "There must be a bit of gypsy in you, for you read me mind to a T." And thus all started their snickering, which made me blood boil all the harder as I tried to kick at them with me loose feet, which, however, only served them to taunt me more, as now the murderous scarecrow cruelly bragged, "Best to get all your sinning and killing done while you're still living, 'cause you're going to be dead for an awful long time. And old death won't be letting you have any fun now, will he?" And, as before, all commenced to laughing and slapping each other's backsides once more. And then, the fat grubby one said while scratching his gimpy leg, "We're all going to be busting some hell wide open when we be getting there, aren't we, boss?" "Aye," replied the scarecrow. "Hell is a far richer place to be than being a dead-end drunk living down a dead-end track. Just like my sorry old pa. For I put that mad dog down with a frying pan without touching a single drop. Yes, best to be doing all your debauchery while you're still sober, and afterwards, well, you can study the rum. Gives you something to look forward to, doesn't it, lads?" And if like that wasn't already horrible enough, he said, "We're going to be a sight to behold. We won't be playing no second fiddles there, I give you my word. We'd be the devil's very own flesh puppets," threw in the fat grubby one, just for sorry measure he did, when judging from the cut of his eye. "Who can stop us from having his fun?" "It's no concern of ours," squawked the little runty one. "We're going to be a living to the ripe old age, and that's for sure." "True," replied the scarecrow with a wink. "It's because of all these pure thoughts and clean living we've been practicing," which only made them belly laugh all the harder a second, until it seemed their sides were going to burst from all their sickening joy. And then I heard Tom-Tom started to his whooping and hollering again, when without warning the little runty one bloodied my son's mouth by giving them the backside of his bonny hand, now striking our wee Tom-Tom down with his blinding swipe and crowing, "That'll teach you to shut your clatter-trap, boy!" Oh, I wanted to lay hands on him to kill him, but alas, with all me squirming, the rope slipped tighter around me windpipe, and as I was drawing in me last breath, as I seen the world passing before my eyes as one funeral at a time. And alas, it was mine with me poor family soon to follow for sure, by the hands of these murderous cutthroats, no doubt. Now all I was left with me unanswered prayers as I dangled there at the end of me rope, when all of a sudden like it felt I was kicked square in me chest with a full-sized boot, with that of a booming roar so mightily deep, so long and drawn it was. It had the voice of a thunderous waterfall crashing upon rock, which was then quickly preceded by a great tearing through the wood. It all very much sounded to me as a team of draft had broken free whilst hauling a heavy log, as now the tall skinny one, that dread beanstalk of a scarecrow having that filthy smirk wiped clean from his face, most fearful, inquired in his consternation, "What in hell's creation is that infernal noise? Has the devil called forth his unholy choir? Damnation, what is that commotion drawing nigh?" For now, what raced across me field upon the fleetest, most agile feet, even faster I swear than the hooves of the swiftest deer, what appeared to be as a wild man 10 or more feet tall, as a raging Irishman he was, all covered in reddish-brown fur. I never seen anything so big and fast in all me life, for he was upon us in an instant, within the twinkling of an eye. So sudden it all was, striking like a disaster, that no one had time to even utter a word, much less cry out. For now it all became as the fox which found itself in the chicken house to steal its alpha hen only to realize a ravenous lion in its wait, when suddenly, as from nowhere, the hairy giant landed in our midst as a blinding bolt. As a great flaming mountain he was, as he kicked the fat grubby one with a gimpy leg dead level in his stinking pot-belly, now making it was the most terrible crunch, as it sent him a-sailing as some unspeakable ghastly ball with his stubby arms and legs cartwheeling for better than 20 yards or more. Just as he grabbed and broke the rope I was slowly strangling on. All mind you, whilst he was going about his goodly deed, he held in his other hand the barrel end of the tall skinny one's musket, which then the murderous scarecrow promptly fired into his massive chest, and with but a jerk, the giant flung the man, he and his rifle, over me field. He was now as a scarecrow, riding a witch's broom, cawing all the way through a flock of blackbirds for. Alas, he held on to his gun to the bitter end, as he landed on me picket fence with a great crashing thud. Then the raging giant with his now free other hand became as a gardener and plucked the head clean off the other, as a crofter would a rotten apple from its laden branch. And lastly, he laid halt to the little runty one by his scrawny shins, and began to wield him as an axe to the oak, now girding his body round what was intended to be my death tree for sure. And alas, when all was said and done, when the bloody butcher's bill was paid in full, I just stood there with me little Tom-Tom clinging to his gargantuan leg. Then McCarthy said, "He's not pretty, and I'm not ugly, but he's the most darling thing I've ever seen." "That he is," I replied as I wiped the blood from my eyes for cause of all my choking, and after a brief coughing spell I cleared my throat and finished with me saying, "You can have all the victuals from me field and cornbread you want. Why, you can even take supper with us at dinner table if you like." And that's when these eyes, still being a bit blurry from me botched hanging and all, had spotted a little trickle of blood issuing forth from his colossal chest, and I could just barely make out the hind end of the lead shot peering. And thus I marvelled how his physique had stopped the ball dead in its track. He was as 1,000 pounds of iron with the strength of Samson. No man or beast on earth could stand against when he was crossed. Still, me old puzzler was scattered about a bit, which left me with a terrible ringing in me ears, but at least it wasn't as a belfry going off in me head no more, as mercifully it had begun to slacken off, as my blood flow resumed its natural course from me neck up, when suddenly I heard me Cathy exclaim with her hand to her forehead, "Dear Lord, Frank, we've got to get rid of all these corpses. For what will we tell the constable? We certainly can't bring up Toby, can we?" "Yes," I pondered. Bodies are indeed a hard thing to explain away, and then the thought popped in me head and went straight to me mouth without stumbling once. "We'll plant 'em as hole fillers for the stumps. They weren't much good for anything else in life, but they will make great compost for me plants." And then, as I craned me head up towards Toby, now lost in his shadow was I, with me neck still a-paining me something fierce, still feeling much like a limp noodle, and a foot longer it was, and said, "I don't know exactly who or what yard, or the whence you come from, or where you bound, but I do know there's good in your heart, for you found a place in it for our Tom-Tom." And then I thanked him and told, "You're a far sight better than most. You ask for nothing, yet you give so much of yourself. Thank you for saving our lives and all you done. May God bless you for doing it." And as he looked down upon me, now molly-coddling me wee youngin' so friendly in his tree-like arms, I swear I saw him crack a great big old smile, and by George, Tom-Tom wasn't lying, for he did have big, square teeth, after all. Now it was all so very amazing, and once again I was glaikit for words. I had none to spare or explain, for how could I? And so, time being no man's friend, we went about our business of planting the nameless rogues, just as nameless as they were as from the accursed day their poor mothers birthed them, and mercifully, no one was ever the wiser. All except for the worms, of course, and they tell no tales. All glory to the heavens above be praised. Now, ever since, when my mind returns to that fateful day, I say to myself, when the world has ye against the dike with its icy fingers wrapped around your chucking bone, with all its sinful death according to men lost in their wicked ways, it's nice to know there's a Toby standing in your corner to catch you when you fall. It does me heart good to know you're out there, my friend, that there still be a bit of magic left in the world, after all.
Chilling tales for dark nights.